Name a foreign leader that you respect.
I guess I'm having an Aleppo moment in the former president of Mexico.
But I'm giving you the whole world.
I know.
Anybody in the world you like. Anybody. Pick any leader.
Well, Angela Merkel came up later on. Gary Johnson, leader of the Libertarian Party, admitting to another Aleppo moment, as you saw there. Embarrassing moments, though, aside for a second. Johnson and Jill Stein, in our latest poll, get nearly 1/4 of the young vote, and nationally, 10 to 15 percentage points when put together. So with the race so close between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, any point shaved from third-party candidates counts for both of the two candidates, both Democratic and Republican. But will voters saying yes to Johnson or Stein on the phone to pollsters say something different when they're actually at the voting booth in November? It was first brought up, that question, in California in 1982. Then Tom Bradley polled well before voting day, but then lost, shocking many experts. Studies from that election posited that voters could not express to pollsters, ergo people on the phone, that they did not support a black governor, or that when behind the voting curtain, they could not, in the end, support Bradley. Then there's Ralph Nader in 2000. Polls leading up to the election had him garnering 5 to 6 percentage points of the popular vote. But actual vote counts from November gave him less than 3 million votes. That's about half of what he was expected to get based on those polls. Joining us now, returning, Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, Michael Steele, former senior advisor to Jeb Bush, and Democratic strategist Emily Tish Sussman. So I want to start with this with you, Emily. When we look at some of the numbers here, and let's drill down to Nevada and take a look at Florida as well, and we'll discuss that very same third-party numbers and how soft or how strong they might be in these states. As you can see here, Nevada, 7 percentage points to Gary Johnson. And then in Florida, when we look at Florida, you add both Stein and Johnson together, that's 8 percentage points. Are these numbers for third-party candidates a little bit softer than they are for the other candidates?
Well, they honestly could end up being a spoiler, as I think that you've been alluding to in the lead up to here. And people who are supporting Johnson and Stein are primarily doing them as protest votes. They felt like their candidate, and I'd say largely they are Bernie Sanders supporters, their candidate did not win in the primary, and so now they really want to support them as a protest. Ironically, particularly the Johnson position is actually really the opposite in many ways of where Sanders' platform is and the things that it attracted a lot of young voters to him in the first place. Things like college affordability, college without debt, things like raising the minimum wage, getting money out of politics. Johnson is really totally on the opposite side of that, whereas he believes in, he loves Citizens United, you know, more corporate money into elections, repeal the minimum wage entirely. You know, it seems actually very confused about the role of the federal government in college affordability. And Clinton, I mean, look, the Sanders supporters in this race, they did their job. Those things were inserted into the Democratic platform and fully embraced by Clinton, even where she had been partly supporting them before. They're now fully embraced. So they did their job. Now they're really supporting him as a protest vote.
Jason, to you on this, the Bradley effect, which we're looking at, is that phenomenon specifically, which seems to be consistent with the Nader situation as well. Do you see this affecting the third-party candidates this cycle?
Not really, Richard, because the Bradley effect, you know, as a political scientist, the Bradley effect is really racial. It's the idea that
the idea
that
of it, though, Jason. The idea of it.
Well, yeah, the idea that people will say something publicly that they're not going to do when they get to voting booth. I completely agree. There was a great poll about 2 weeks ago out of North Carolina where they interviewed, you know, third-party voters, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, and over 73% of those voters said they would prefer another 4 years of Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. So I think in a lot of instances, if you ask a Gary Johnson voter, do you even know who his VP is? They probably don't know. I think a lot of those people are going to come home. They're disaffected millennials, soft-leaning Democrats, and some independents. They're probably going to end up voting for Hillary Clinton.
You know, Michael, as we look at what's happened with Gary Johnson, you know, he's still winning some endorsements. You know, we got the Chicago Tribune and we got 5 other newspapers. But because of his inability to answer some basic questions with the press and on air nationally here, he looks potentially to be a future victim of the Nader effect here.
Well, I think the frustrating thing for a lot of Republicans who aren't comfortable with Donald Trump is that the libertarian ticket isn't flipped. Governor Bill Weld was a great governor of Massachusetts. He has exactly the sort of fiscally conservative but more socially liberal profile that a lot of people are looking for. So I think it's a real shame that the fecklessness and foreign policy blunders of Governor Johnson are leading people's perception of the Libertarian ticket when they have, in the lower half of the ticket, a really appealing candidate who could win a substantial number of Republicans who aren't comfortable voting for Donald Trump.
You need to talk about endorsements. I think it's worth noting that Johnson actually has more newspaper endorsements than Donald Trump.
Yeah. You know, Emily, let's look at this also, because we were looking at Bill Weld on Friday during his interviews on MSNBC. It appeared like he was hedging his bets here. And this is similar to the question I'm asking about. The third-party supporters, those in the third party, are they more prone to change their minds, even the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party here?
That would really be something.
That would be something, Emily.
That would really be something. I know he had said that Hillary Clinton is very well qualified, potentially more than his own candidate. We would welcome that. We would welcome his vote.
All right. Thank you, all three, Jason Johnson, Michael Steele, Emily Tisch Sussman, for coming by today. Appreciate your time.